I'm back. I just returned from the Football Manager World Cup and I've been sitting on this database since the end of the transfer window because all of the transfers are updated. Every team is locked and we get to simulate the Premier League to see what is actually going to happen. Because what's Football Manager for? It's not for predicting the future. It's like our very own, whatever those magic ball things are that people use to see into the future in movies. What is this? What is it called? I don't know. It's still there, so. Anyways, Magic Pelota. What does the future hold for us? Well, after 3 games, Liverpool's on top with 9 points, and they are joined, obviously, by Nottingham Forest, who are also on top with 9 points, meaning they have won their first 3 games. Rather historically accurate, we have Chelsea at the bottom of the league with no points from its first 3 matches, so it seems Football Manager is planning on giving us an entirely normal rendition of the Premier League season with updated squads. And these squads really are fully updated. That's probably why Chelsea's so bad, because they've already loaned out Raheem Sterling to Arsenal. Apparently, he was the only person holding it all together. It wasn't the other 75 guys, it was him. Crucial mistake. Manchester City has suffered an early season loss at home against Newcastle. Newcastle somehow managed to not take advantage of that, and it's their only win from their first 3 matches. They drew against Everton, a team that has managed to somehow not blow multiple multi-goal leads at this point in the season. I guess to be fair, Everton only blew 1 multi-goal lead in their first 3 matches, so we should give them another chance. Type them up though, Everton's only win was 2-0 over Manchester United, who have just 1 win from their first 3, thanks to a couple of goals from Beto, the type of striker that Football Manager just absolutely loves to make unstoppably amazing. In terms of other title favorites, not a hot start for Arsenal either, because, well, it's lost 2 of its first 3 matches. Yeah, that's not very good. But they were to Manchester City and Liverpool, so yeah, maybe. What's that? But who's that club? Above Manchester City in the Premier League? Is that the Uplift Desk? Look, I didn't know they had a Premier League club, but they are what makes a lot of the stuff we do on this channel possible, because I'm standing up right now because of my Uplift Desk. I thank them for sponsoring this video because, man, I've used Uplift Desks for a very long time, and there is a reason why. They're incredibly easy to use, and they can fit your space perfectly. I've moved multiple times, but I have continued to order a new Uplift Desk each time that I have moved. You can pre-program multiple heights so that the desk can move with just the push of a button, and they come with a ton of amenities that you can add to help customize it for whatever you happen to be using your desk for. For example, I need a lot of monitor arms of various weight-bearing abilities, and they were able to accommodate all of that for my 27 monitors to play a spreadsheet video game. How about a CPU holder for my massive PCs to play said spreadsheet video game? Uplift's got me. They're just great desks, honestly. I can't tell you how many times I've hurt my hand smashing it onto this desk in vain after Football Manager screwed me over. So if you want your own Uplift desk, you can check out the link at the top of the description, and thank you so much to them for sponsoring this video and for supplying the desks that I've used for basically my entire streaming and YouTube career. But no, that's not actually them in the Premier League ahead of Man City. That's Southampton with 7 points from their first 3 matches. Let's continue. Our next stop in the journey through the Premier League season is after match day 10, where we have Liverpool absolutely running rampant with 9 wins from their first 10 matches. Their only loss, of course, was Brentford away, exactly as you predicted. But they didn't allow a goal in all of September, including 4-0 wins at Wolves, a 2-0 win at Aston Villa, 2-0 at home against West Ham. The season's about to pick up a little bit for them, so we'll see how that goes. In second, Tottenham Hotspur, because Ange Postecoglou always wins something in his second season, as he so boldly stated. They've also only lost 1 match on the road against Bournemouth. Everything else in the table seems to be righting itself, except for Chelsea. Despite being updated with all their fantastic transfers, Chelsea finds itself way down there in 19th position. Now, 1 win from 10 is not great. Chelsea's only win 1-0 away against Southampton. They've managed 5 draws and scored 1 goal in the entirety of September. An 80th minute João Felix goal against Arsenal to pull out the draw. Nicholas Jackson seems to have awakened recently with 3 goals in the last 2 matches, but Chelsea's not been able to win either of those either. And it is also out of the League Cup with a defeat to Luton Town at home. The only team Football Manager hates more than Chelsea is Wolves. But Wolves does have more wins than Chelsea. It's just lost 8 of its first 10 matches. The thing is, Wolves did beat Chelsea though, so like, who's the real loser here? But I'm not letting Manchester United escape the blame here. They're sitting down in 12th with just 2 wins from their first 10 matches. The Tractor Boys from Ipswich Town are only a point behind Manchester United after 10, and they're kind of flying 3 points clear relegation right now. I don't want to jinx them or anything. City's fought its way back into the top 4. Arsenal's already 11 points off the top of the league, but is in the top 7. And Brentford, perhaps a surprise, in 7th. But they're tied with Brighton, Everton, Crystal Palace, and then Nottingham Forest kind of 1 point behind. So big old traffic jam that could really get sorted out in a second. See, it took me longer than a second, but it takes you a second. Watch this. Okay, little rusty, wrong century. Got it. Okay. And we have a tie at the top of the league after 18 matches played. Liverpool and Tottenham both running at 43 points. Man City lurking menacingly as they always do with 37 points, 6 points off the top of the table. And Newcastle buttoning down a top 4 spot at this point in the season. Crystal Palace has left mid-table mediocrity in the past and is running in 5th place along with Brighton and Villa. Arsenal and Manchester United have grouped up in a pile of sadness in 8th and 9th. Really devastating title run attempt from Arsenal here. This is supposed to be Arsenal's year. They're losing away to Salzburg in the Champions League. They lost away to Bayern Munich. There's no other way to interpret this than it's a step backward. They lost away to Brighton. They lost away to Tottenham in the North London derby. They recently drew a home match with Leicester, a team that's been running around the bottom of the league the entire season. They're just not playing like a team that's going to be able to threaten the title at all. I mean, they're already, 16 points off? Leading goal scorers are Bukayo Saka and Gabby Martinelli at 5 apiece. Raheem Sterling has 3, but he's picked up a calf strain. I mean, the highest average rating's Bukayo Saka, and he's at just a 7.13. Everybody's healthy. Arsenal's just not delivering. And on the Chelsea saga, they have managed to win 4 of their last 8 matches to pull themselves up to 14th position. We will see if they're actually able to turn this all the way around. While Wolves, Southampton, and Leicester are running away with it at the bottom. Ipswich, it's getting a little scary. I might have jinxed them. I'm sorry. Football Manager's definitely not high on Leicester, though, because despite winning 2 of their first 4 Premier League matches, Leicester hasn't won since. It is currently December 30th in game. They have not won since September 30th. Now, I recognize that I had an American public school education, but I'm pretty sure that is 3 months without a win. Unless, of course, they beat Fulham today. And guess what? They didn't. But they did win their next match, and another match against Wolves to make it 4 wins in the season. The problem is they basically lost every other match, including Brentford, Crystal Palace, Everton, West Ham. I mean, you can read, you can see it. But the 2 wins have pulled Leicester up to 18th. They're still hanging out with Wolves and Southampton. And if you were wondering how 17 points in 26 matches still has you in 18th position, that's because this bottom 3 has separated by a lot. Fulham is in 17th. It's on 27 points. Football Manager has chosen, and it has not chosen kindly, on the 3 teams that it believes to be the worst. Maybe there's a miraculous comeback coming in the final 12 matches. I don't necessarily see it based off the way the boys are playing. And remember when Chelsea was doing poorly? I mean, really poorly. That whole 1 win in its first 10 poorly? Well, turns out Chelsea's new team just needed a little time to gel because they cooked off 4 wins from 5 in the middle of their run around December. And then they won 3 straight again, including Arsenal and Newcastle. And they're led by Joao Felix, who has 7 goals, including a lot of the decisive goals in the important matches that Chelsea's been winning. But they haven't scored a lot of goals, though. They've only scored 33, which is still 1 more than Manchester United. You see, Manchester United's been going in something of the other direction. They had an abysmal November where they only got 1 point in a 0-0 draw at home against Manchester City. And ever since, they've really struggled for consistency, which is how, of course, they fell behind Chelsea. Most recently, losses against Bournemouth, 3-1, and then a home loss against Ipswich. The Tractor Boys are plowing, by the way. They're only 5 points behind Manchester United on 30 and feeling comfortable. And considering Leicester and Southampton, the other 2 teams that just got promoted, are part of the trio of doom at the bottom of the table, that's pretty darn impressive. Working our way up the table, we see Arsenal settled into 6th, but they have complemented their 6th place league position with an actual piece of silverware. They won the League Cup final against Liverpool and are currently on a 5 5-match winning streak that might just be able to turn their season around. You can imagine where they were in the table before they dropped that 5-match winning streak, 4 of which were in the league. So even though it's not the season of dreams, Arsenal's next golden generation does have silverware. But it is also behind a Crystal Palace team with a negative goal difference in the league. So it's a give and take here. Newcastle is 4th, but there is a very clear top 3 in the Premier League according to Football Manager. That would be Manchester City in 3rd on 57, Tottenham in 2nd on 60, and Liverpool top of the league with 62 points. Liverpool hasn't lost a league match since losing away to Manchester City at the end of December, and we are at the end of February. They've only dropped 2 points in the league since that point, actually. And their first loss since then overall was obviously a stunning blowout loss in the League Cup final. Shout out to Kai Havertz for the brace, by the way. Your update on the Golden Boot race has Erling Haaland with 15 goals, which based off his pace in real life is highly low. Highly unrealistic. Followed by Ollie Watkins and Son Heung-min, by the way, so pretty standard. But it's time for a window into the end stages of the season, shall we? Well, 5 more matches have been played and no magic comeback from the 3 relegation teams. Wolves has jumped to 18th on 21 points, but those 3 sides look doomed. Everton is the one closest, which means that Football Manager thinks Everton's a lot better than it actually appears to be. Manchester United's slide has continued, and I'm pretty safe to say Erik ten Hag would have been fired at this point. They were knocked out of the Europa League in the round of 16 after a 2-0 win at home was erased by a 3-0 defeat at Bayer Leverkusen. And even though they're in the semi-final of the FA Cup, they haven't managed to win a Premier League match since January. It's April. It's a complete and utter meltdown for Manchester United. And that's why Erik ten Hag was fired in November. Thomas Tuchel was hired 26 days later. He's been there ever since and clearly has not turned it around. Tuchel, in fact, has been in charge of the entire losing streak since January. On the other hand, Chelsea's demonstrated an utterly miraculous turnaround, putting together a lot of green. They did lose on the road to relegation-threatened or nearly relegation-confirmed Wolves, and they also lost Aston Villa, but they produced home wins against Arsenal, Newcastle, and that draw against Manchester City as well. Considering this is what we were looking at the start of the season, Football Manager thinks that once all those Chelsea players learn each other's names and they don't have to wear name tags in the dressing room anymore, they're going to be pretty good. Crystal Palace has also fallen off, by the way. They're in 10th. Only 2 spots ahead of Ipswich Town, which I just have to point out because they are ahead of Manchester United. The top 6 is very familiar, with Brighton and then Arsenal fighting its way up to 5th, battling Newcastle for a top 4 spot. And the top 3 is the same, with Manchester City on 65, Tottenham on 66, and a rampant Liverpool on 72. They're 7 points clear of City with a match in hand. If they blow it now, it would be catastrophic. And we are going to find out if they did. They didn't. How about 28 wins in 38 Premier League matches, 89 points, and a win for Arne Slot's boys? A return to the title for the first time in 5 years, with Tottenham actually finishing 2nd and Manchester City finishing 3rd. Erling Haaland only scored 18 goals in this simulation, and he lost the Golden Boot to Son Heung-min, who put in 20. Arsenal, after a really disappointing stretch in the middle of the season, finished 4th, with Chelsea a point out of Europe, which somehow feels like a victory considering how horribly the start of the season went. Manchester United, because it really was going to be difficult for it to get any worse, managed to pull itself all the way up to 10th with what was actually a very good April and May, even though it did not win the FA Cup. That went to Liverpool, who beat Bournemouth in the final. The winner of Europa League final was Leverkusen, which to be fair is unlucky to Liverpool. While we reset everything to the accurate, up-to-date this year stuff in England, Leverkusen's obviously in the Champions League in this season that we're simulating, so if they come up against Liverpool, Football Manager thinks that Leverkusen's going to beat them. The relegation didn't change. Wolves, Leicester, and Southampton went down, but Southampton put together a really spectacular 19 points with a minus 61 goal difference, so that was nice. As for Champions League, no English team made it past the quarterfinal. That's where Manchester City lost to Inter, blowing it in the second leg to go down 2-1. So maybe not a high watermark year for English teams in general, but Liverpool did win the title. But I know what you're thinking. It's just one simulation. How much could it possibly mean? Well, I simulated it 9 more times because I was curious, just like you were, and Liverpool ended up winning 6 titles in those 10 total simulations. Manchester City won the other 4. There was no surprise title winner. As for the teams that finished in the top 4 over those 10 simulations, Liverpool was the only team that finished in the top 4 every time. Manchester City actually managed to miss the top 4 on one occasion, finishing 6th. That means they tied with Tottenham, who also finished in the top 4 9 times. Then there was Arsenal, who managed 6 top 10 finishes, including the one of the simulation we just tracked. And Manchester United, even though they were terrible in this simulation, got 2. Newcastle, Aston Villa, and yes, even Chelsea managed 1 finish in the top 4. And so did Nottingham Forest. For some reason. I don't know. There's a 10% chance apparently that they have a stupidly good year. As for the relegations in those 10 simulations, it turns out what we had happen right here was pretty indicative of what the overall simulation thinks will happen. Wolves was relegated 9 times in 10 simulations. So if you're a Wolves fan, I would be sweating a little bit going into this season because Football Manager actually hates you. And the other 2 most popular were Southampton and Leicester, who both got relegated 6 times in 10 sims. There were some other teams that got relegated a couple times, though. That would be Ipswich, unsurprisingly, Everton, and Bournemouth that all got relegated 2 times apiece, which for Everton is like a dramatic improvement over where they happen to be sitting right now. And then Brentford and Brighton somehow got relegated 1 time each. Then there was also Nottingham Forest, which got relegated once, which means Nottingham Forest holds the incredibly strange distinction of being the only team to finish in the top 4 and also relegated over the course of just 10 simulations. So if you are a Nottingham Forest fan, put on your seatbelt because Football Manager's picking a wild ride for you. But this was a great database. Thank you so much to Cody for making it. It makes a lot of the databases that we use for these videos and also does some writing. His free time. An excellent website called The Trivella Effect where Cody writes, a couple of other people write about non-Big 6 type stuff. It's similar to the Zealandism type stuff that we do in some ways. And so if you want to check that out, it is also in the description as well as the Uplift Desk stuff for you. And if you want to keep binge watching videos, this is me locking Kylian Mbappe on the literal worst team in all of Football Manager. And we also did it to Erling Haaland. That's kind of a surprise in that video, but I'm spoiling it for you because it is interesting to see the difference between how the 2 of them do. Very interesting.